One of the more difficult things to do in any sport is come back to your full fitness after hitting the very bottom of your fitness. Oftentimes, very talented athletes, for one reason or another, just start performing very poorly, and when this happens, it's not uncommon to see them retire early or just never reach their previous fitness. But the athlete that is pushing this narrative as far away from them as possible is Kenenisa Bekele from Ethiopia. In this year's London Marathon, the 41-year-old Bekele managed to place second with a time of 2 hours, 4 minutes, and 15 seconds, which is not only amazing for the fact that he did this at 41, but he also managed to break his own Masters World Record that he set just a few months ago in last year's Valencia Marathon, where he ran a time of 2 hours, 4 minutes, and 19 seconds. Now, Bekele is highly regarded as one of the greatest distance runners of all time, and in my personal opinion, he is the all-time greatest for his exploits on the track, on the roads, and especially in cross-country. But what makes Bekele such a unique and timeless runner is the fact that he has just kept going despite having huge difficulties over the past few seasons. For a few years in the late 2010s and even into the early 2020s, Bekele had difficulties even finishing his marathons. I remember a few specific times when Bekele was competing where he literally just fell back so hard and hit such a thick wall that he was simply unable to continue. When this did happen, it was difficult to see because Bekele used to be the absolute greatest finisher on the track in both the 5,000 and the 10,000 meters. And despite his recent struggles, he has made his previous 2 marathons absolute burners, finishing very high in 2 of the biggest marathons in the world. Now, the specific reason that we're circling back to Bekele once again is because we have quite the interesting circumstance revolving around Bekele and the qualification process into this year's Paris Olympics. Now, from 2004 to 2012, Bekele was an automatic qualifier into the Olympic Games. He was just so good, so fast, and so successful. And he also managed to qualify and medal during every single World Championships between the Athens Games in 2004 and the London Games in 2012. But in 2016 and in 2021, Bekele was not able to make the Olympic teams, as the Olympic committees of Ethiopia did not select him in either years. Now, personally, I think that he could have qualified in both 2016 and in 2021 and performed quite well, because he is the ultimate competitor when he reaches the biggest stages. But moving into Paris, there is a strong case to be made that Bekele should be on the Olympic team, and if he does, this would be his 4th Olympic qualification over the course of 20 years. From 2023 to 2024, Bekele is the only Ethiopian man that has run under 2 hours and 5 minutes twice. Not only this, but whenever he competes, he has proven to be extremely competitive, even pushing the pace in first on a few occasions in this year's London Marathon. Kenenisa Bekele might be 41 years old, but he is more than ready to compete with the big boys once again in the Olympic Games, and I am confident that if the Olympic Committee did select Bekele, he would represent them extremely well, and I also feel to some extent that they owe this to Bekele, as he literally earned more World Championship and Olympic medals than any other athlete in Ethiopia. Now, there's a very interesting article that I just read on LetsRun, dissecting the reasons why it does make sense for Bekele to make the Olympic team, and I'll make sure to link this down below because this is a very interesting read. But the point that got across to me the most was that along with Sise Lema from Ethiopia, Kenenisa Bekele makes the most sense. Over the previous 2 seasons, from 2023 to 2024, Bekele's best during this time only lands him in 5th place, behind Lema, Bekele, Galeta, and Wolde. But here's the reality of what just happened in London. For Wolde, he was with Bekele and the leaders up to 30K, but he ended up not even finishing, which obviously is a huge issue, especially for the most recent marathon moving into the Olympics. So for Wolde, it makes sense to have him slightly below Bekele moving into Paris. Now for Tekele Bekele, he hasn't raced at all this spring, so there's a reason to believe that he is either injured or just not in good shape at all right now. And if you haven't raced at all during an Olympic season, the Olympic Committee has no reason at all to select you, so honestly, he might not even qualify even though he does have a very quick time of 2:03:24. This leaves only one athlete besides Lema that's run faster than Bekele during the past 2 seasons, Kenenisa Bekele, who ran a time of 2:03:27 in Spain earlier this season. But here's the reality of that race. It was one of the fastest marathons of all time, because out of the top 5 athletes that ran here, they ran personal bests, and the average personal best of these athletes was almost by 2 entire minutes. So for Bekele, who ran a very fast time of 2:03:27, it almost seems as though he's more likely to be in 2:05 or 2:06 shape right now. Now, there's a lot more detail in this article, so I would highly recommend it if you are wanting Bekele to qualify for the Olympics. But realistically speaking, Bekele has a solid chance at making this year's Olympic Games, and I think Ethiopia really should select him for the Games. The only other athlete that remains for Ethiopia that we haven't touched on yet is Tamirat Tola, last year's New York City Marathon champion, who kind of went crazy on the streets of New York. However, just like a few other athletes in London this season, he did not finish, and Bekele went on to run extremely well. It's honestly crazy to think that Bekele has made such a strong comeback, and I will admit, I'm a huge Bekele fan. He has done some amazing things throughout his career, and the battle against time itself has been so inspiring to watch. So with all of this information in mind, I would love to hear from all of you on this matter. Do you think Bekele should qualify for the Olympic Games, and what time do you think he will run if he does compete in Paris? Thanks for watching, everyone, and as always, until next time.